Welcome to The Psychology of Us with Professor RJ Starr. I'm so glad you're here today because we're diving into a topic that truly shapes the way we navigate our lives: emotional intelligence. Whether we're aware of it or not, emotional intelligence is the invisible compass guiding how we understand and manage our own emotions, as well as how we connect with others. It's the difference between reacting impulsively and responding thoughtfully, between building bridges or burning them. In short, it's essential. Let's start with what emotional intelligence, or EI, really is. At its core, it's about recognizing, understanding, and managing your own emotions while also being attuned to the emotions of others. Think about a time when someone's calm response diffused a heated argument, or when a friend instinctively knew just what to say to comfort you. That's emotional intelligence in action. It's not just about being nice or good at feelings. It's a skill that can be developed, practiced, and applied to every corner of your life. For me, the power of emotional intelligence became clear during a particularly challenging moment early in my career. I was leading a team on a major project, and tensions were running high. One team member was especially frustrated, and to be honest, so was I. My first instinct was to push back, defend my position, and move on. But something made me pause and really consider what was going on. I realized this person wasn't upset with me. They were overwhelmed and scared of failing. Instead of escalating the situation, I shifted gears, acknowledged their frustration, and asked how I could support them. The outcome was transformative, not only for the project, but for my relationship with that colleague. It was a turning point in how I approached leadership and collaboration. As we move through this episode, I want you to reflect on your own emotional habits. Are there moments when your emotions seem to take control? Times when you struggle to connect with someone else's perspective? These are opportunities to develop your emotional intelligence. And the good news is, no matter where you're starting, this is a skill you can strengthen over time. If you have questions or thoughts as we go, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at profrjstar@outlook.com with your feedback or suggestions for future topics. Let's explore this together and see how emotional intelligence can reshape the way we think, feel, and act in the world. Emotional intelligence is often described as a set of interconnected skills, and to truly understand it, we need to break it down into its four core components: self awareness, self regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. These components aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical tools we use, consciously or unconsciously, every day. Let's start with self awareness. This is the foundation of emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and understand your own emotions. Imagine feeling frustrated, but not knowing why, or perhaps being so caught up in your anger that it clouds your judgment. Self awareness allows us to step back and identify what we're feeling and why. It's a bit like holding up a mirror to our inner selves. Research suggests that people who are more self aware are better equipped to make decisions and manage stress because they understand how their emotions influence their behavior. Next, we have self regulation, which builds on self awareness. If self awareness is recognizing your emotions, self regulation is managing them effectively. It's the difference between feeling anger and letting it consume you versus channeling it into something constructive. For instance, when faced with criticism, self regulation helps us pause, consider the feedback, and respond thoughtfully instead of defensively. It's a skill that can be developed through techniques like mindfulness, reframing, and intentional breathing. The third component is social awareness, which shifts the focus from ourselves to others. At its core, this is about empathy, our ability to understand and share the feelings of another person. Think of a leader who can sense when their team is overwhelmed, or a friend who knows when you're feeling down without you saying a word. Empathy doesn't just make us better at connecting with others, it also helps us build trust and strengthen relationships. It's an essential part of emotional intelligence that requires active listening and observing nonverbal cues. Finally, relationship management ties all of these components together. It's about using self awareness, self regulation, and social awareness to build and maintain meaningful connections. This might involve navigating conflict, inspiring a team, or simply being there for a friend in need. Strong relationship management isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about approaching them with authenticity and care. To illustrate how these components work in practice, let's consider a case study. Picture a manager, let's call her Amanda, who leads a diverse team in a high stress environment. Amanda is known for her calm demeanor and ability to inspire her team, even during crises. When tensions rise, she doesn't react impulsively. Instead, she acknowledges her emotions, regulates them, and approaches the situation thoughtfully. She listens to her team, showing empathy for their concerns, and works collaboratively to find solutions. Amanda's emotional intelligence fosters an environment where her team feels valued and supported, boosting morale and performance. Her leadership demonstrates how EI is not just a personal skill, but a tool for influencing and uplifting others. The significance of emotional intelligence gained widespread recognition thanks to Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence: Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. Goleman's work challenged the traditional notion that intelligence, measured by IQ, is the primary predictor of success. Instead, he showed that emotional intelligence plays a critical role in everything from workplace performance to personal relationships. His research revealed that people with high EI are often more adaptable, resilient, and effective in leadership roles. Goleman's book is a must-read for anyone looking to deepen their understanding of this transformative skill. As we continue, I encourage you to think about how these components of emotional intelligence show up in your own life. Are there areas where you excel and others where you might want to grow? Recognizing these opportunities is the first step toward developing a deeper connection with yourself and those around you. Developing self-awareness and self-regulation is where emotional intelligence begins to feel actionable. These skills allow us to understand our emotions and manage them effectively, creating a foundation for healthier relationships, better decision-making, and greater overall well-being. Let's start with self-awareness, learning to recognize what we're feeling and why. One of the best tools for building self-awareness is journaling. Writing down your emotions and the triggers behind them can uncover patterns you might not notice in the moment. I remember a time when journaling completely reframed how I understood my stress. For weeks, I'd felt this vague sense of irritation at the end of the day, but I couldn't put my finger on why. So I began jotting down my thoughts in the evenings. It didn't take long to notice a pattern. The irritation often stemmed from overcommitting myself during the day. Seeing it written out helped me realize I needed to set better boundaries, not just with others, but with myself. That small act of reflection was transformative. Another powerful tool is mindfulness, which is simply the practice of being present in the moment without judgment. Meditation is one way to build mindfulness, but even small habits, like pausing to notice your breath or checking in with how you're feeling, can make a difference. Mindfulness creates a mental space between stimulus and response, a moment to observe rather than react. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to recognize your emotions in real time. Once we've built self-awareness, the next step is self-regulation, managing our emotional responses in a way that aligns with our values and goals. One of the simplest yet most effective strategies for self-regulation is using breathing techniques. Deep, intentional breathing signals to your nervous system that it's okay to relax, helping to counteract the physiological effects of stress. A technique I often recommend is called box breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and hold again for 4 counts. It's easy to do anywhere and works wonders for calming the mind. Another practical strategy is cognitive reframing, which involves challenging negative thought patterns and replacing them with more constructive ones. Imagine you've made a mistake at work, and your first thought is, I'm terrible at this. I'll never get it right. Cognitive reframing encourages you to step back and consider a different perspective. I made a mistake, but mistakes are opportunities to learn. I'll use this as a chance to improve. This shift doesn't ignore the problem. It helps you approach it with a growth mindset. Finally, self-compassion is an essential part of self-regulation. Too often, we're our own harshest critics, especially when emotions run high. Self compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a close friend. Instead of saying, I shouldn't feel this way, try saying, it's okay to feel upset right now. This is hard, but I'll get through it. Research by Dr. Kristen Neff has shown that practicing self compassion not only reduces stress, but also builds resilience over time. Developing self awareness and self regulation takes practice, but it's worth the effort. These skills allow us to navigate our emotions with greater clarity and intention, setting the stage for deeper empathy and stronger relationships. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed or reactive, take a moment to pause, breathe, and reflect. You might be surprised at what you discover and how much more in control you feel. Building empathy and social awareness takes emotional intelligence beyond ourselves and into the realm of understanding others. It's the bridge that connects us to the emotions and experiences of those around us, allowing us to foster trust, navigate conflict, and deepen relationships. Let's begin by defining empathy, which comes in two forms: cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. Cognitive empathy is the ability to understand someone else's perspective or what they might be feeling. It's about reasoning and intellectual understanding. Emotional empathy, on the other hand, is feeling with someone, experiencing their emotions as if they were your own. Both are important, but they serve different purposes. Cognitive empathy helps us analyze situations and respond thoughtfully, while emotional empathy builds deep connection and compassion. Practicing empathy isn't as abstract as it might sound. One of the most practical ways is through active listening. When someone is speaking, instead of planning your response or jumping in with advice, focus entirely on what they're saying. Notice their tone, their body language, and the emotions behind their words. Then reflect back what you've heard to ensure you understand. Simple phrases like, "It sounds like you're feeling frustrated about this," can go a long way in making someone feel seen and heard. Perspective taking is another valuable tool. It's about stepping into someone else's shoes and considering their experience, even if you don't agree with it. This requires curiosity and a willingness to set aside your own assumptions. For instance, if a coworker seems distant during a meeting, instead of assuming they're disinterested, you might consider other possibilities. Are they overwhelmed? Did they receive bad news? Asking yourself these questions can soften your response and lead to a more compassionate interaction. Let me share an example of how empathy can transform conflict. I once worked with a team that was experiencing significant tension between two members. Each felt the other was dismissive and uncooperative, and the situation was spiraling. When we brought them together to talk, the breakthrough came when one of them shared a personal struggle they were going through, a health scare that had been affecting their focus and mood. The other team member, who had initially felt dismissed, immediately softened. They shared their own experience of feeling overwhelmed by a heavy workload. In that moment, both realized they weren't adversaries, but people dealing with difficult circumstances. That shift in perspective, driven by empathy, resolved the conflict and strengthened their working relationship. If you're interested in diving deeper into the role of empathy in relationships, I highly recommend Brené Brown's The Gifts of Imperfection. Brown explores the importance of vulnerability and how embracing our own imperfections allows us to connect more authentically with others. One of her central ideas is that empathy is rooted in our willingness to be vulnerable, both to share our own struggles and to hold space for others. Building empathy and social awareness isn't just about making others feel better. It's about creating a more harmonious and connected world. So, as you go about your day, try to notice the people around you. What are they feeling? What might they be experiencing? By practicing small acts of empathy, you'll find that relationships deepen, conflicts resolve more easily, and life feels a little less divided and a lot more connected. Strengthening relationships through emotional intelligence is where the real magic happens. Whether in personal connections or professional ones, emotional intelligence enables us to navigate challenges, foster trust, and build bonds that withstand the tests of time and circumstance. Two critical aspects of this process are effective communication and conflict resolution, both of which rely heavily on the principles of EI. Let's start with communication. At the heart of effective communication lies the ability to express yourself clearly and without blame. One of the simplest yet most impactful tools for this is using I statements. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," which can sound accusatory and defensive, you might say, "I feel unheard when I'm interrupted during conversations." This subtle shift focuses on your own feelings rather than assigning blame, which helps prevent the other person from becoming defensive and keeps the conversation productive. Equally important is recognizing and validating others' emotions. When someone shares their feelings, our natural response is often to offer solutions or minimize their concerns. "Oh, it's not that bad," or "here's what you should do." But what people often need most is to feel understood. Simple acknowledgments like, "I can see why that would be upsetting," or "It sounds like you're feeling really overwhelmed," can make a world of difference. Validation shows the other person that their emotions are legitimate and that you care enough to truly hear them. Of course, even the best communication skills don't prevent disagreements. Conflict is an inevitable part of any relationship, but emotional intelligence can transform how we handle it. One of the first steps in navigating emotionally charged situations is to pause and manage your own emotions. This might mean taking a moment to breathe, or even stepping away temporarily to cool down. Approaching the situation with self regulation ensures that you respond thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. Next, seek to understand the other person's perspective. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but demonstrating empathy through phrases like, "Help me understand why this is so important to you," can de escalate tension and open the door to a more collaborative resolution. Finally, focus on finding common ground rather than winning the argument. This requires flexibility and a willingness to prioritize the relationship over being right. When both parties feel heard and respected, compromise becomes much more achievable. To illustrate how emotional intelligence can resolve conflict, let me share a story about a disagreement between two business partners I worked with during a coaching session. Their relationship had soured over a project delay, with each blaming the other for miscommunication. During our session, I encouraged them to first articulate their feelings using I statements and to listen actively without interrupting. As they began to share, it became clear that their frustrations stemmed not from the delay itself, but from feeling unsupported by one another during a stressful time. By validating each other's emotions and shifting the focus from blame to problem solving, they were able to rebuild trust and create a plan to avoid similar issues in the future. Emotional intelligence doesn't eliminate conflict, but it gives us the tools to approach it with compassion, clarity, and a commitment to understanding. Whether it's through thoughtful communication or collaborative problem solving, these skills strengthen relationships in ways that are both profound and lasting. As you think about your own connections, consider how you might integrate these strategies. With practice, emotional intelligence can transform even the most challenging interactions into opportunities for growth and connection. As we wrap up today's conversation on emotional intelligence, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've covered. Emotional intelligence begins with self awareness and self regulation, recognizing your emotions and managing them in ways that align with your values. It extends outward through empathy and social awareness, helping us understand and connect with others. And finally, it strengthens our relationships by enhancing communication, navigating conflicts with compassion, and fostering trust. The beauty of emotional intelligence is that it's a skill we can all develop. If you're looking for a place to start, I encourage you to try this simple exercise. Spend a few minutes reflecting on your emotional triggers. What situations tend to set off strong reactions? And how do you usually respond? Or, in your next conversation, practice active listening. Focus entirely on the other person's words, emotions, and perspective. These small steps can have a profound impact on your personal growth and relationships. It's important to remember that emotional intelligence is a lifelong journey. There's no final destination, no point where we master it completely. Instead, it's about committing to growth. learning from each interaction, and striving to show up with greater understanding and intention each day. Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Psychology of Us. If you have questions, feedback, or ideas for future topics, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at prof.rjstar@outlook.com. Emotional intelligence is a skill that grows through practice and reflection, and I'm excited to explore it further with you in the episodes to come. Until next time, take care, be kind to yourself, and stay curious.